Today's gospel reading is Matthew 13, 24 through 31, and 35 through 37. But in those days, following that distress, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, men will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. And he will send his angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of the heavens. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see these things happening, you know that it is near, right at the door. I tell you the truth, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know when the owner of the house will come back, whether in the evening, or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or at dawn. If he comes suddenly, do not let him find you sleeping. What I say to you, I say to everyone, keep awake. This is the word of the Lord, and herein lies our trust. New beginnings. My gosh, do not underestimate the power that they hold. New beginnings. This is the beginning of our lectionary year, the church calendar, where we retell our Christian story through the scriptures Sunday by Sunday. And this is year B, and it's told through the eyes and through the ears of the voice of the Apostle Mark. You know, and as we begin, it makes us wonder about our own story. You know, where are we in it? How do you feel about it? Are you tired of your story? Are you in need of a new beginning of your own? If you are in any way, in any area of your life, then this most assuredly is the season for it. The journey begins because Advent is upon you. It is the 4 weeks leading up to Christmas. And oh, it is such a special time. It's a time of expecting waiting and deeper preparation for the coming Christ child. It is the most essential of new beginnings that the world has ever seen. If we could tap into that glorious, that revolutionary, and transformative power of this season, how then could our stories be changed for the better? That will be our focus over the next 4 weeks as we begin this 4-part sermon series that I'm going to call Journey to Rebirth. And it's a time to reinvent ourselves, or more appropriately termed, to re-advent ourselves. In today's gospel, Jesus tells us to keep awake, he says. You know, and now most of us do not need to be told to keep awake this time of year. You know, as we are almost all working in a state of sleep deprivation as it is. You know, we just got through, preparing and cooking a Thanksgiving feast, traveling, or hosting family from out of town, and gosh, and after all that, we don't even get a break. It's Black Friday, it's Cyber Monday, and it's the rush to get out and get all the right Christmas gifts before time runs out. And that's on top of all your regular duties. So nobody needs to tell us to keep awake. In fact, it seems like it might be more appropriate to start dishing out the Lunesta and the Ambien to counteract a revved up, caffeinated, Red Bull Christmas season of busyness. But let's be clear that while our world's busyness may seem to point towards Christmas, it seldom points towards the coming Christ child. You know, this season we are indeed asleep to much of what matters. It's like buying a house near the airport. You kind of, notice, on moving day, the planes that are going by, but later as you live there, you no longer hear it. You're sleeping soundly through the roar of the engines that go by. What airports? Are we so used to the noise of Advent holiday, so much so that we no longer truly notice it? Has it ceased to jolt us awake? We may not be physically asleep this Advent, but in our wakefulness to the world, we've fallen asleep to the spiritual season of God itself. And so, yes, we need a wake-up call, straight from the Gospel of Mark, calling for change, calling for a new beginning. It is my hope that the holidays can once again be transformed into holy days, and our lives along with it. As we begin the season of waiting and expectation, we lit the first candle of our Advent wreath, which is the candle of hope. And so it begs the question, what kind of hope are you waiting for in your life? What kind of change do you long for? What kind of new beginning do you envision? What's the new you look like? Do you smile more? Do you explain less? Are you available more? You know, one of the things that I love about hope is that it is at the very heart an inside change. That even if your circumstances or your situations do not change one iota, hope can still sneak in and it can take hold and enliven you and refreshen you to the dream that is most certainly at hand, if you believe. You know, hope is an inside change that gets you through an enormity of outside strain. It is the catalyst for your new beginning, and it is the fuel of your transformation. And I understand that it can be a struggle to take that initial step, to light that inner candle of hope once again, to spark the first glimmer, because the truth is that it may have been a very hard year for you, filled with unexpected loss, unintended hurts, unimaginable things in our lives. I get it. I've had a tough year myself. Age 36 has challenged me more than any of my younger year drug-addicted follies ever could have. And there's some crazy stories. You've heard some of them. But I am better for it. In Psalm 80 today, as we looked at it, the people are in a world of hurt. And they want God to know about it. They say, give ear, Lord. Listen to me. Why are we being fed bread of tears? And they're clear that they want God to do something about it. They say, stir up your might and come and save us. They realize where their help comes from. It's from the Lord, the maker of the heavens and earth. And they're not afraid to call on it. Psalm 80 gives voice to the people's grief, anguish, and hurt. And it also gives voice to ours as well. Often, when our lives are filled with difficulty, we find ourselves paralyzed, seemingly unable to move, silent. But hope, it is the resounding, conquering call that shines rebelliously through the unexpected night, restoring us to power. We must use that voice, as Job likes to say, to speak the anguish of our spirits. We must speak it aloud, not only to call on God, but for ourselves, to hear with new ears what we are saying, to hear it in truth, where our anguish lies. You see, we realize, that some things in our life are absolutely out of our control. But our focus must absolutely be the many things that are. The truth is that we have come a long way. We have come a long way, but we must have the courage to say that we still have a long way to go. We must have the courage to say, there are things in my life that I do. There are things in my life that I say that are holding me back. You must have the courage to say that you are your own barrier to healthy change. It's me. It's you. You must be awakened and ready to take steps to re-advent yourself through the greatness that this godly season holds. As we turn our eyes to the gospel today, it seems a little strange, a little out of sequence as you read it, because, as we begin the story to Christ's birth, the lectionary turns, first our eyes to last things. We see adult Jesus speaking of his second coming. Thought we were journeying to birth. And as I thought about it, perhaps it's calling us to begin our journey with the end in mind. Of course, Advent will eventually take us to the baby in a manger, but it begins by traversing the cosmos. Jesus says, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away, he says. It's the end of the world as we know it. You always throw those in. But this section of the Gospel of Mark, it's often called the little apocalypse. is what it's often called. And it's regarded as speaking of the events which took place around 70 BC. And this was a bad year for the Jewish people. Just as Jesus surprisingly predicted, the temple was destroyed. And the events around the fall of Jerusalem, they left a painful, deep wound and a void for the people. You see, the temple in Jerusalem, that was the center of religious life. They traveled there every year from wherever they were in order to get to God. And the war with the Romans, had ravaged the countryside and left thousands of their family dead, their community. We thought we had a bad year. So it is understandable that some, including Mark, would associate these horrible events with the end of times. Certainly you can relate, because Lord knows there's been days in your life when it seemed like the sky was falling, just like Chicken Little. I know you can recall days when the sun refused to shine upon you, and everything that you knew to be true, everything you knew to be just, shook and crumbled to the ground. But as we read on, what sounds like disaster, however, actually prepares the way for the Son of Man to ride upon the clouds, returning once again in glory. If you're hurting today, He's coming for you. Your clouds will part, and He is coming for you. For the Jewish people of the time, the destruction of the temple actually was a blessing in disguise, because they now had to learn to worship God in a new way, in a new place. Where do we go now? They had to worship in the only true temple they had left, the inner temple of the mind, the inner temple of the soul, and the heart, body, where the Spirit of the living God stirs in the utmost deep. Because that is the place of new beginnings. You see, this little apocalypse brought them to a deeper relationship with God and with their Creator. My gosh, don't we want that too? We can have it. If we want to be transformed, then we have to allow the apocalypses of our life to bring us closer to a God that saves, closer to a God that heals, no matter what befalls us. Stars may fall, but your hope must always rise. And in the name of God, I speak this so. If we too want new beginnings, then we must take a hard look at the temple that we have created, that is our lives. We must ask ourselves boldly. We must ask ourselves truthfully. Are there any parts of my temple that need destroying? Are there any parts of your temple that need destroying? What is holding you back from a deeper relationship with the Father? What kind of things are in the way? What kind of bad habits have planted themselves over the years in your temple walls? What kind of walls need to come down today so that you can reinvent yourself? That is the call of Christ today. Not only to keep awake, but to wake up in the first place and realize that we all need a little apocalypse in our lives. Heck, I can name off 5 things right this second that I'd like to see crumble to the ground about myself. Things that I know keep my temple from being its best. You see, a little apocalypse is just part of the journey to your rebirth this season. You must first clean your slate and make room for the gifts of the coming Christ child in your life. My hope is that we will receive him in a newer, deeper, further reaching way this year, and in a way that is advantageous to our temples. It is my prayer today that we will wake up on Christmas morning with a new sense of God in our lives, with a deeper understanding of what it means to have a new beginning. Lord knows we need one. Today is the day. Advent is upon you. May you fan that flicker of hope, because the light of the world is burning inside of you. That is the key and the place of your new beginning. I tell you the truth. Amen.